I think what was really notable in 2011 was the impact of social and mobile technologies on the geopolitics of the world. I mean, we have seen these technologies change the world in a short period of time.
There's a lot of speculation about what Apple's going to be up to in 2012. I mean, they've talked about the idea of a 15-inch MacBook Air, which I think is almost certain. I would be stunned if they didn't come up with something like that, because the move toward ultrabooks, ultra lightweight, notebooks, gives you kind of the best of both worlds. You've got the portability of a tablet, but you've got the real horsepower of a real laptop.
2012 is going to be a big year for Research in Motion for sure. That's for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that they're expected to release a brand new BlackBerry smartphone operating system built on an entirely new code foundation from QNX system. That operating system is going to be called BlackBerry 10, and there's a clear focus on touchscreen navigations and gestures.
I think tablets are more an extension of the notebook PC experience. PCs are dead, but desktop PCs are dead. But I think tablets have sold well, but they are not going to replace the notebook PC. I think you'll see that especially next year when Ultrabooks start to come out in a big way. Apple has one, rumored to have one. And Intel has, fostered a whole bunch of them. Acer and Samsung, I believe, just released some, or just to release the specs on them. Those are going to change the way people compute in business.
I think 2012 is going to be a different year. It's going to be a more pivotal year for Microsoft, mainly because of Windows 8. Windows 8, you're going to hear a lot about it for the first half of the year. The beta is coming out in late February, and then there'll be a release candidate and so forth. But the volume's going to be turned way up.
Windows 8, Windows 8, Windows 8.
Every year, New Year comes up and someone predicts it as the year of mobile malware. Well, to some degree it does continue to get bigger and bigger. I mean, increasingly as people have mobile devices, of course, the bad guys are going to find ways to exploit what's going on mobile devices.
Bottom line, I think the whole tablet thing is overestimated. I really do. Yes, there was a big purchase of it. Yes, I have two of them, okay? But that doesn't mean that it's going to transform the IT landscape. I think it's a trend that will not go away, and it's here to stay, and it is going to change things, but things don't change overnight.
One of our reporters had a story last month about IBM was going to open the doors to BYOD, bring your own device programs. And I think what companies have realized is that people can be more efficient and effective using their own devices. They know how to run these things. They know how the software works, how the apps work. And so what companies are trying to do is sort of take advantage of that.
We're also very, very surprised to see just how quickly both social and mobile technologies really impacted the IT department. We've seen IT departments that for decades have been all about control and management and telling people what they could use. Mobile and social is shaking that up. Companies are trying to figure out ways to accommodate these technologies, to give people what they want, to deliver apps instead of applications.
Once people started showing up with the iPhone, and once the CEO comes in and says, hey, I've got a new iPhone, how do I get this to work with the company network? That's going to trickle down.
I can tell you, by way of example, I know of two big pharmaceutical companies who have bought and are supporting 10,000 iPads for their salespeople. 2 years ago, those would have been Windows laptops.
There's a lot of discussion around the effectiveness of security software at this point, just because malware is, just like a real-life virus. It mutates, it changes, and it's a lot of security teams now are pointing to the fact that the identification of viruses and malware out there, that system is broken. Identifying them and then putting up, different walls against those. That system is broken because things change so frequently, and we're going to see a lot of discussion around that in 2012.
It's stunning the amount of data that you can now carry around with you, corporate data, on your phone or your iPad. And now you've got something like Apple rolling out iCloud. So what do? You've got somebody with an iPhone and they've got corporate email or maybe corporate other corporate data that's on their phone, and now they're backing that up to the iCloud. You've got data leakage possibilities, everywhere.
You know, we're talking about malicious email attachments on mobile devices. We're talking about, you know, finding malware just from plain old web surfing. We're talking about the kinds of attacks where they try to get you to click on something by promising you something, and then you get on there and it's harvesting your personal data, the kind of thing you might see on Facebook. All of this similar to what's going on with PCs already, now moving to the mobile platforms.
I think the more crucial threat, though, is malware is now being used in a two-stage process whereby, you know, they send out zillions of malware, you know, all the time. When it gets in through a crack somewhere, gets inside a company, then it phones home and calls in the real troops. And they come in and they take data, they do whatever makes them money, frankly.
HTML5 is going to enable a lot more capabilities for rich web development, but it's also going to introduce a lot more possibilities for attack vectors too, and that's because HTML5, you don't need these add-ons. It has a much more sophisticated language and a full database, so users can actually store gigabytes of information, but in storing that information, that means that it's a new target for cyber criminals. So where traditionally we've seen cyber criminals going after the PC, you know, they want to get at your device for information, now a lot of the security researchers are predicting that instead the attack will be on the browser in order to get the information contained in the browser.
You've got a blurring of lines now. You know, it used to be you went to work or you went home. Now you work from home. Sometimes people do Christmas shopping from the office computer. You're using, you know, corporate software on your own device at home. You know, there's a blurring of lines there, and that's going to make it more difficult, I think, to keep track of corporate data and keep, you know, privacy issues, you know, private.
I think what was interesting was just how the attack vectors really are everywhere now. You know, it used to be porn sites and, you know, sharing sites that were rife for exploit, but now really you're not safe anywhere. It really doesn't matter where you go. There's always the potential for infection because of either a bad ad somewhere, a bad link, and you really need to know what to look for, and you really do need to think before you click.
In 2012 and beyond, I expect to see big data really hit the market, not in theory, but in practice, as people really tap into the tools and technologies that allow them to mine the wealth of information from social networks, from the larger web, to really start to make better decisions, and decisions more in real time.
I think big data is real, and you know, exactly how it will roll out remains to be seen. But I do think that companies recognize that as a real opportunity to fine-tune what they do.
Microsoft needs to keep pushing its Office 365 suite. It's been successful so far, you know, moderately, but it has to keep up the momentum for these companies, these big enterprises that want to move to a more cost-effective and convenient cloud model for email, productivity apps, unified communications, but also stay in the familiar Microsoft ecosystem.
We have taken great notice of the impact of virtualization on everything. It started with server virtualization, we've moved to desktop virtualization, we've moved to storage virtualization, network virtualization. In its ultimate form, cloud is virtualization, and cloud will have an enormous impact, whether it's private cloud or public cloud, on the entire tech industry.
I think some of the outages that happened with Amazon services sort of raised some flags for people, and I think, you know, obviously IT shops are looking for ways to save money, and if they can offload some things to the cloud, you know, they may try to do that, but I think it's going to be more in baby steps this coming year, more so than the big rush that I think everybody thought was coming in 2010 and 2011.
One of the things that was really notable in 2011 was how tech really shined as its own economic sector while the rest of the economy was just in the doldrums. I mean, the tech industry was just incredible this year. We saw companies like IBM where its stock hit an all-time high, the stock of Apple, stock of other companies. Companies in the technology industry were really insulated from what happened in the rest of the economy around the world, whether in Europe or the US, partly because they have helped companies get through this recession without having to hire more. I think that's an aspect of technology that wasn't well explored. What happens next with Apple? What does it mean for Apple as a company? What does it mean for the way they innovate? What does it mean for the way they bring products to market? What does it mean for the brand around the world?
I think the Jobs legacy is going to continue for another couple of years, and I don't just mean the product pipeline. I think the company has a very established culture, and I don't think it depended on Steve Jobs in order to survive. Now, 5 years from now, my guess is it will be a different company, and that it will have other leaders who are going in different directions than Jobs was. Jobs was a unique man.
I think RIM's going to still be facing the same problems that it is currently, even though the operating system will be better, a little bit sharper, better looking. I'm not sure it's going to be enough to regain the loyalty that former BlackBerry users had.
Microsoft has to do a good job of convincing skittish IT managers who are hesitant about the cloud but want to stay with Microsoft products to go to Office 365. It's kind of a new world, and they need to earn the trust of IT managers there.
My concern for Microsoft is that I don't know that they have long-term vision for, they can't be the same company they are now forever. I'm also not sure that Windows 8, which is primarily aimed at sort of merging tablets with the desktop or notebook operating system, I'm not sure it's going to work all that well on notebooks.
And finally, it's been very interesting to watch companies like Oracle and HP and others just try to recreate the old computing stack, to own everything from the hardware to the software and the services. And I think what's interesting about this is this telling that this is the last phase of the client-server world? These companies trying to own and dominate the last phase of the client-server world because of the way cloud and because of the way virtualization will change everything.